relevant and impactful topics shaping our industry. My name is Kagiso, and I'm honored to be your moderator again today. Today, we'll be speaking about travel policies, a topic that is also quite pertinent for many travel buyers and travel managers as a whole, in terms of how travel policies are being adjusted or are having to evolve to suit the current travel industry as of today, basically. It is central, basically, to manage the travel environment for companies, but as well as ensure that the travel policy aligns to the organizational goals, as well as, incorporating emerging trends that are coming in the travel industry, including wellness, sustainability, awareness around environmental impacts of travel, as well as linking back to the ESG policies of companies. Today, I'm joined by Jonathan Scott. He's a senior account manager at FCM Travel. He has 24 years of experience in the travel industry. He'll be sharing with us his insights as a program manager that manages multinational accounts in Africa as well as the rest of the world. And will give us his insights in terms of what clients or travel buyers are doing today, and basic information around what kind of questions travel buyers or as well as policymakers in organizations are facing today, and how we can look at the future in terms of in using the travel policy to enable business for organizations, as well as incorporate some of the pertinent topics around sustainability as well as wellness. Jono, over to you. We're delighted to have you with us today.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much to the GBTA team and to Kagiso for having me today. So as mentioned, I'm Jonathan. I'm based at FCM Travel. I am a hybrid worker. I'm currently sitting in Cape Town, but I do commute between Johannesburg and Cape Town for the sake of our customers and my portfolio. I have been in travel for the longer part of my life, the majority of my life. So I don't really remember much before travel started, but it has been quite a journey. If we consider what travel looked like sort of in the late 90s, early 2000s to where it is now, I mean, it's just a different world. So I'm really excited today to chat and collaborate with all of you on travel policies. I think we can all agree travel policies is where everything starts with a travel program. It really should be a framework that is agile enough to be reviewed consistently and changed to suit the ever-changing travel market. So really excited to be with you all today. And Kagiso, over to you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Jono. I'm actually quite pleased to have you as well. We work in very similar roles. We know a lot of our clients are asking a lot of questions, so hopefully we can help to unpack some of those. So in terms of the housekeeping, we'll run the panel discussion between myself and Jono. I will lead the questions, with Jono obviously giving us his insights, and then afterward we'll give over the floor to the audience. If at all you have any questions or insights or trends that you're picking up on your end, please feel free to post them in the chat. Nikki will also alert us when there is a question. And finally, we'll do closing remarks and hopefully some actionable takeaways after the session. Then we are just also to mention that we are recording the call. So that if you want to refer back to it, you can pick it up on our YouTube channel as well as our LinkedIn page, as well as if you would like to share the conversation with your colleagues and peers in the industry. So I'll start off with the evolution of travel policies, in terms of what we are seeing and where we can look for changes. So, Jono, in terms of travel policy, in the last few years, there has been a need to adjust and adapt the travel policy to suit all the emerging trends, whether it's for employees, as well as we know the emergence of hybrid work, as you as well. I'm a remote worker, 100% remote. So what are the key factors that are driving these changes, and how are buyers or policymakers looking at incorporating these changes into the travel policy?
Thank you, Krishi. So that's a great place to start, I think. If we are considering the last few years, we can honestly maybe regard it as post-pandemic. So what have travel policies been doing post-pandemic? What changes have been happening? And really, there had to be a lot of changes. We all know what happened during the pandemic, and what happened after the pandemic, and how travel just suddenly erupted. The industry itself was operating very differently, but a lot of our travel policies with organizations had remained stagnant, as they were pre-pandemic. So I think a couple of the most prominent changes that I've noticed, the first thing would be around cost. So there was always that sort of clause in any travel policy about going for the cheapest. A lot of concentration on cost saving as the key driver in any travel policy, and it's still there. There is still a cost control element to any travel policy, but we've noticed a lot with the last few years of having to focus a lot more on traveler wellness, together with costs, together with sustainability, together with increasing travel budgets. So there's a lot more sort of factors at play now. And if you consider how a travel policy might have said, always go for the cheapest option. Now, a travel policy may read, let's go for the lowest cost logical option, depending on what that company perceives that logic to be. So it might be the cheapest, most direct option if you're looking at a flight, because they've got a sustainability factor at play. They've got a responsibility towards their traveler wellness, especially their frequent travelers. They might be going for shorter business trips. You don't want them to be traveling longer distances and be away from home longer. So lowest cost logical option, there's a very different sort of narrative around that at play at the moment. I think also how travelers, companies are monitoring their travel spend. They might have a clause like advance purchase. In most travel policies, there is some sort of advance purchase, a policy where you need to book travel 14 days for domestic or 21 days for international in advance. And we all know that business travel isn't always that accommodating, and the need for travel is not always that accommodating. So I think corporates in the last few years, to try and control costs as business travel has increased so much and budgets have had to increase, they're focusing a lot more on the need for travel. So what is that travel purpose? What is the return on investment of that travel, rather than just going for the cheapest all the time? So there's a lot more sort of shift in how they're analyzing their data. And how people are traveling. So the need and the purpose for travel, is that travel necessary, and is there some sort of benefit to the company or return on investment for travel? So that's certainly a shift as well that we've noticed. We're noticing a lot more sort of one-day trips happening just for one sort of travel purpose, and rather sort of a multi-purpose trip happening. So they might be going for a longer period of time, but to fulfill more than one business function. So that's another sort of change. And with that, we can also see a little bit of consideration towards traveler wellness coming into play. So a little bit less on the need to always catch that red-eye flight and be back the same day, but maybe, they'd be able to fly sort of the night before, so that they're fresh and ready for business activities of the day, and come back at a reasonable hour as well. So that's another thing that we've sort of noticed. We're also noticing on the travel wellness side, a lot more sort of premium travel being allowed. So there's a little bit of leniency creeping in terms of booking classes, where economy class used to be really the bulk of any travel program, and that percentage was quite high. So you really could only travel in a higher class, let's say, for 8 hours travel time plus. We're noticing that leniency sort of widen it a little bit, where premium economy is now taking a lot more of that economy class spend, because corporates are realizing that their frequent travelers who are away so often for the benefit of their business, they need to have a certain level of comfort as well. They're not traveling totally for pleasure. They might be traveling for pleasure, but certainly there's a business element, and they need to remain productive and comfortable while they're away. So there is some leniency creeping in there, while still looking at cost saving. We're noticing a lot more shift in from economy to economy plus or premium economy, and then obviously onwards into business. So that's definitely one thing. Another thing that we've sort of looked at is how corporates have maybe segmented their travelers. So where you might have always had a separate sort of rule class or business travel policy guideline for your senior management or exco, there is a slight shift now with corporates focusing on those frequent travelers that might not hold the title. They might be in your sales team, but they're traveling a lot more than your exco or management there. So also, rather than having a blanket approach on all travelers, let's segment them, and let's allow a little bit more wellness and comfort for those travelers who are away a lot more than senior management might be. So that's also a different element that we've noticed. And then a big one for me, and probably lastly, Riso knows to stop me because I love talking about travel. So policies is a big one for me, so I'll try and keep it short and sweet. And last one I would say is approvals. That's a hot topic. It's not a great topic for any organization. I think if you're a traveler, the word approval just leaves a bad taste in your mouth, because it does present challenges in trying to get that travel booking done quicker. So we have seen a shift in a lot of our multinationals, specifically if I look at my portfolio, where pre-pandemic, they would have had very sort of lengthy, often multi-level approval processes. And even travel within policy would need 1 or 2 levels of approval. The industry doesn't really accommodate that very well anymore, with the volatility of how airlines are not guaranteeing fares. They might guarantee the seat for a certain ticketing time limit, but the fare can always change. Availability is a lot more erratic. It doesn't accommodate for a lengthy or complex approval process. So I've noticed a lot more sort of streamlining of your approval process. Some corporates might have a pre-approval based on a set budget for that cost center. So it's more a may I travel before even, approaching the TMC for quotes or booking online. Others might have moved in the direction of any travel that is within policy doesn't necessarily need active approval, but maybe just what we know in the industry as passive approval. So where the manager just gets a notification that this person has booked this travel for this trip purpose. And then they might be able to still intervene if they disagree with that travel and contact the TMC to void or cancel that trip, if it still allows for that. So yeah, approvals really have had to evolve. I think there's still room for them to evolve more, because things are only going to get a lot more erratic in travel, but certainly there's been a nice shift there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jonah, you've touched on a few areas as well as, some ideas that you basically shared that some other corporates are doing. And a lot of it, obviously, now is not dictated around cost control, but it's a fine balance. It sounds like it's a very fine
Yeah.
balance between, wellness, cost control, as well as ROI, right?
Mm, mm,
So, in terms of the trends, I mean, we had a session in January really looking at sustainability because that's quite a big theme now around corporate travel as well as travel policy. In terms of travel policy, are you noticing that corporates are asking for and are wanting to incorporate more reporting or meaningful insights that that can be incorporated for their dashboards or that they can use when they are looking at changes as well into the travel policy?
100%, Kagiso. I think, in years pre-pandemic, there was a lot less analyzing of data. TMCs were supplying data to corporates. Corporates were getting their monthly reports or their live reporting tools and that sort of thing. But the only way that you can change a travel policy or make those, right decisions for your business travel program is by analyzing data. So if you want to now start, you've got multiple factors and it's not just cost saving anymore. Now you've got to look at traveler wellness, look at sustainability, and so on. The need for data and the need for in-depth data and real-time data and dashboards is really there. So whether you've got bespoke reporting set up for your organization through a TMC or a third party, or whether you're getting that data from your TMC, what are we doing with that data? And that's what really matters. So there needs to be a lot more of a strategic focus, and I believe there is, especially for a multinational company, and a lot more collaboration between TMC and organization in reviewing that data to notice travel patterns and travel behavior. And there, from that data, you make better decisions. So technology comes into play. Organizations need data at their fingertips. So rather than sending that Excel report, you really want them to have a lot of self-service and control over their data and accessibility. So yes, it all starts with data if you're looking at changing a travel policy.
So, in terms of wellness and duty of care, how are organizations ensuring traveler wellness both physically as well as mentally? As as we've seen in terms of the trends, it's not only about also in terms of wellness, it's really not about just the length of the trip. It goes into the quality of the trip, the quality of the accommodation, amenities, value adds. So how is that all incorporated in terms of drawing up the new travel policy for the organization?
Yeah, so that's really great. I think the first thing is when you're looking at data and considering travel wellness, there wasn't a lot of focus maybe historically on having data that speaks to traveler wellness, that speaks to duty of care, and the happiness and comfort of your travelers as well. So now with reporting, you can also consider seeing how many of your travelers are traveling over a weekend or at really, really crazy hours in the morning, overnight, and that sort of thing. Is it really encroaching a lot into their personal time? So yeah, there is reporting that most TMCs are able to provide around that, and that's really something to look at as well. Can you maybe from that data consider having travel promoted between a Monday and a Thursday, or possibly flying the night before on a Sunday evening if it's for an extended trip, so that there's comfort, the traveler is well rested on that Monday morning. So absolutely, they're using data a lot more. It's not your transactional data really, but it's also data around the traveler. Also, who are your frequent travelers? Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not always senior management. It's not always exco. Sometimes you've got other travelers that really need to be focused on and accounted for when it comes to wellness, because they're away a lot more and they're bringing a lot more return on investment to the business. So we need to, as an organization, take care of those travelers as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. So and again, in this response, Jono, you talk about a lot of it. It seems that there has to be a balance between return on investment,
Mm,
wellness, as well as the company objectives. Duty of care definitely is a bigger focus. We've seen,
mm.
especially post COVID, but there seems to be still quite a number of gaps in terms of travel programs, linking back to the travel policy, linking back to company policies, right?
Yeah,
What are some of the
100%.
yeah, what are some of the biggest gaps you see in travel programs, because of that sort of disconnect between policy,
Mm.
program, and what really happens in the day-to-day operations of traveling?
Absolutely. So, Kahisha, I think that between our customers, we've had conversations like these before. If you consider a multinational company, often there's one global travel policy, and it might not speak to the geographic sort of footprint of that global company. We all know, I'm assuming that the majority of our colleagues here today are from the sort of African or sub-Saharan Africa region. We do things differently. Our travel needs are maybe slightly different to what a European or American sort of travel pattern is like. So we do notice that sometimes there's a need for a travel policy that might have a blanket approach for all geographic locations, to maybe have an addendum or something that speaks to those local market nuances. In Africa, there's a lot of sort of airlines or that are not as easily bookable through the normal booking channels. There's also a need maybe for more security, in certain African markets. Um, those really need to be accounted for in a global travel policy. It's not the same needs that a US traveler might have, but there needs to be allowances for those things to make sure they're taking care of their all markets as a whole, in terms of duty of care. Also looking at restrictive countries as well, keeping that updated by looking at geopolitical things that are happening. That needs to be regularly looked at as well, to make sure that you're allowing your travelers to travel because the need is there. Travel has grown a lot over the last few years, and it will continue to grow as business grows. But are those travelers going to safe and secure destinations? So absolutely, it's a big topic, and it's something that we really need to continually look at.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, it's basically it's difficult to cover everything, right? I think, and also try, because there's also an emerging trend when it comes to travel policy, to make it as simple and layman
Mm,
terms as possible. So,
yeah.
apparently, the best travel policy is a one pager. So how do you then capture all these different elements, in terms of travel risk management, duty of care, wellness, linking back to employee policies, company policies? It's quite a huge task to try and summarize and bring into a document that only governs travel. Do you find that travel policies are also looking at areas around um, traveler preferences, reducing layovers? How do they try and incorporate all of this guidance? Because the travel policy is a guidance document. How
Mm.
do they try and incorporate this type of guidance within the travel policy without making it more complex to understand from a traveler perspective, travel arranger perspective, as well as the travel partner perspective in terms of fulfilling those travel requests?
Yeah, so I think really, other than analyzing data, a multinational organization needs to have, number one, policy custodians. So within your organization, whether it's a group of travel managers, maybe you've got a global travel manager with regionals as well, that work together, share their experiences from each different market, and what requirements they have to make sure that travel policy that they're all custodians of speak to the wider market. That's certainly a good place to start. You don't want a travel policy to remain stagnant and be on an intranet, forever and not change. You don't want it to be too complex and too ambiguous as well for a normal traveler to look at and still not understand what they're allowed to do or what their behavior should be when booking travel. So yes, start with maybe a team of policy custodians, interact a lot more with your TMC, review data together, but also get feedback from frequent travelers. Listen to your top 100 travelers per region or top 10 or whatever it may be. Listen to their feedback, listen to their concerns and that sort of thing, and try and work it in. It is possible. You did say one-page travel policy. I think in my life, I've never seen one. That would be the day. I mean, I would smile. It would be amazing, but it's impossible to just have it all on one page. There's a lot that has to be factored in, but really collaborate a bit more and listen to travelers, I would say. What are they experiencing as well?
Yeah.
And make those changes.
So that brings us to our next, my next question, and I think for me personally, working in a company that has a work from anywhere policy, let's talk about leisure travel and digital nomads, shall we?
Absolutely.
Apparently, Cape Town is one of the top destinations for digital nomads. So, with the rise of blended travel, how are travel policies allowing or adapting to allow flexibility while maintaining compliance, especially around travel risk and security mitigations as well?
Yeah. So I think previously, blended travel, digital nomads, and that sort of thing, it wasn't as normal as what it is today. It wasn't as prevalent in a lot of multinationals as it really is today. So I think it was handled previously on more of a sort of a case by case or ad hoc basis. Whereas now, what we really need to see is a more structured approach, a separate clause or section within a travel policy that caters for that blended travel or the digital nomad. So some of the key changes maybe that we could look at, an organization could look at implementing is clearly outlining, what will the company pay for, number one, and where can how does the traveler then pay for that leisure section of travel? Setting up approval processes as well, so that there's no confusion about when trips can be extended versus not. The priority would probably always be the business travel function first, and then the leisure or the blended part as second. Because your companies are actually making travel available to you from the start. So you're being able to add on that leisure section. Duty of care as well. So that's something that might be missed sometimes. You're booking your corporate trip and you've got a leisure addition to that trip. You've extended your flight, which doesn't incur much cost to the organization. And then, after your business activities, you've got a leisure sort of portion of that. That also needs to be accounted for in terms of duty of care until the traveler returns, so that's something that we really have to look at. They need to be accounted for and available to be assisted during emergencies. So if you're booking everything through a TMC, that's great. When you've contact your TMC after hours, they can also assist with amending those leisure activities. If you're booking it yourself, the traveler needs to remain aware that it might be a little bit more tricky, if there's a travel disruption of some sort. The TMC may be able to help you with the business portion that was booked, but the leisure portion may be up to the traveler, So there are some things that need to be considered within a policy. How are you going to book that blended travel? Does the TMC allow for a separate division to book the leisure portion and that sort of thing? But certainly the same things need to apply: duty of care, wellness. The traveler might need to have a little bit of personal guilt and consciousness around sustainability, when traveling for leisure as well. So yes, that all sort of goes hand in hand. I think for travel managers, it's not just about allowing blended travel, but it's about making it easy and hassle-free while remaining compliant. So if you're going to allow blended travel as a corporate or as an organization, whether it's a benefit or an incentive of some sort to a sales team, that they can travel for leisure or frequent travelers or whatever, make it simple and make it understandable and make the process as streamlined as possible for that person to book travel and know what their allowances are.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, this brings about a lot of gray areas. It's quite a blurry line,
At
so
the moment, yes.
at the moment,
Mm.
we want to keep the travelers happy. You want to keep them safe and compliant. But again, with the emergence of digital nomads and remote
Mm.
workers, or if this happens too frequently, also the company might fall into the danger of having to worry about tax compliance, for example, where
Yeah.
some digital nomads could end up being in an area that speaks to tax residency, the issues around that. What are the insights you can share around, tax compliance, visa regulations, as well as, because if you're a digital nomad and you overstay, how does that, how can companies make sure that they mitigate those kind of risks?
Yeah, so there's a few things that you can, a few solutions you can implement when looking at incorporating digital nomads, those travelers that that normally are away for a lot longer, that need a special set of allowances, but also need to be aware of challenges, aware of legal, tax, and visa implications if they are in a particular country for an extended period of time, doing something, doing a business activity that might not be accommodated by a normal business visa. So there are a few sort of tips and tricks that we have given some of our customers that have this in play at the moment. I think looking at sort of remote work travel limits, so setting clear policies on how employees can stay in one location before that tax or visa implication is reached, so just doing a little bit of homework beforehand, whether it's through a travel manager or through a set person within your HR department or with assistance from the TMC or visa partner, making sure that, you've got those regulations in place so that, I've only got up until this period to be there before the digital nomad needs to move on. Pre-trip authorizations to request approval before extending business trips for remote work. So to ensure, those things like visas, compliance checks, and so on are already done. And then maybe even guiding employees towards countries with a structured digital nomad visa. So there are markets out there that are already catering for digital nomads. It's such a big growing a version of traveler or segmentation of traveler that markets are actually having special visas for digital nomads. So maybe let them go to those markets rather than a country or region next door that might have more sort of stringent policies. Automating tax and visa compliance monitoring, so turning to global mobility platforms that track employee locations in real time, to identify where they are and make sure that there are no sort of risks or contravening of a visa condition. So making sure where your travelers are at that time and that we move them around before things go awry. And then, as I mentioned, aligning your travel team, so your travel manager and then the travel program with your HR department or your HR teams, and letting them work a little bit closely to monitor this. Travel managers now can work along HR or finance teams to ensure policies for both short-term business travel needs are accounted for in the policy, but also remote work and flexibility are accounted for while still keeping them all safe at the same
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
More collaboration.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite complex, but I think yeah, definitely collaboration, getting all stakeholders in the organization involved. As well, you mentioned earlier, consultation with frequent travelers because they are the ones that actually know what's happening on the road.
Yeah.
They experience the good, the bad, and the ugly, of
Mm.
travel. So involving them when you're considering travel policy changes or adaptations. But I'm
Yeah.
also quite interested or curious if you have any success stories you can share where one of your clients, for example, had a change in travel policy incorporating some of these elements that we've discussed, and they've had still positive impact on the bottom line in terms of cost savings, but as
Mm.
well as a higher traveler satisfaction.
Yes, yeah. So I think if you speak to anyone from sort of global TMCs, like the one that I represent today, we all have so many stories, especially post-pandemic, where suddenly there was this explosion of travel. Travel policies weren't aligned. They weren't ready to accommodate for the new world of travel. So it was a little bit of a sort of an after the fact scuttle and change. They had to quickly look at travel policies and change them. And we had to do that and assist many customers with that. One comes to mind where we had a customer that had a very outdated travel policy, despite sort of having those conversations even pre-pandemic to say, this and this and this is changing in travel. This is your traveler's current behavior. Here are some opportunities where we can still save on cost, but also take care of the traveler and move with the industry by changing your travel policy. And that wasn't really sort of happening. This corporate was all about cost saving. And because they were so heavy on cost saving alone, come pandemic, before pandemic, they had a multi-level approval process. I believe for certain travel, there were 3 levels that they actually had to go through just to approve one business trip. And we all know that that just can't happen anymore today. So suddenly, there's travel ban, there's no travel. We then, 21, 22, suddenly this organization realized they really needed to travel, and they needed to travel a lot and very quickly. But they were sitting with a travel policy that had multi-level approvals, very strict on cost saving, very little allowance for those travelers, and it was causing a lot of frustration. We were having to rebook fares over and over, without churning and that sort of thing, but it really wasn't working. So we had to sit down with them very quickly and say, you can't have that travel policy, that approval process anymore. It's not going to work. These are the ripple effects. This is how much it's cost your company extra by having to rebook at higher fares and so on. So we really had to have those honest conversations with them and help the organization look inward to make those decisions to change their policy. They now have a one-step approval process. which is fantastic. There is a little bit of development still with the story, where we're now having to look at technology to bring in approval, because they've also moved a lot of their approvers to other locations cross-border. So now we've got a cross-border element. Yes, there's only one level of approval, but we've got to make approvals easy for them. And we're doing that through technology. So a lot of TMCs are looking at how they can make approvals better for their customers. We're doing that internally with an FCM through our own proprietary approval tool. So that's a really big change, and things have settled well now. They've allowed a lot more higher booking classes. They had an 8-hour clause, and they were largely international traveler, so they had an 8-hour clause for economy only. And now we're noticing it's only 5 hours, and then there's premium economy from 4 upwards and so on. So that was a bit of a big change for us. But lessons learned, best to be proactive and focus on what could happen in the future, and make sure that we're prepared, and that policy is prepared as well for it.
Yeah. So technology obviously plays a key part in terms of the evolution and development of travel as a whole. How do you think we could use, for example, AI in automation from the customer side perspective, and then also all the suppliers involved, whether it's the TMC, the third party, for example, the tracking, the travel risk companies like ISOS, NHO, WorldAware. How can these different touch points be brought together and harmonized, using automation and AI to enforce or complement travel policies, but also allow for quick adaptation of travel policies?
So there's various ways that AI is being looked at the moment within the industry, and through organizations. It is very much a hot topic at the moment. It's a very hot topic, especially with your multinationals, with that European or American sort of influence as well. So from an organization side, there are tools that you can explore with your TMC that monitor and direct travel behavior through the use of AI. So whether it's an overlay on your current online booking tool that sort of gives that traveler a visual guilt and guidance on how to make better decisions, to comply with travel, but also to remain safe. So there's a duty of care element that AI can also bring. So there are really systems out there. I know we've also got an overlay on our current online booking tools that we can offer customers that allows them to drive better policy compliance as well as duty of care. So AI is definitely available to organizations there. Have those conversations with your TMC, see what's available and what's relevant to your industry and your program. But then also for the TMC, we're looking at automating. It is the age of automation and technology in travel. That's how travel is going to be managed in the future. That's my take on it. Anyway, but with that, there must be that desire from TMCs also to introduce AI in how they manage and enhance on operational efficiencies, and that way the organization benefits from quicker, better customer service. So we're also using AI internally as a TMC to benefit our customers. So it's a two-step approach with AI, but yes. Investing in technology, you can never go wrong. You will get your return on investment. It is the way that you want to have encourage a lot more self-service to your travelers, self-control as well, rather than the traditional ways of booking and managing travel.
Yeah. So before we get to our closing remarks, I just want to see if there's anyone in the audience that has questions, remarks or any comments.
It looks like we've done a fantastic job.
That's
Anyone is
great.
now, they're already looking at their travel policies and seeing where can we change, where can we enhance, and where can we adapt, you know. So,
Well, I just hope that some of the insights that we provided today, or discussion points, did pique some of their interest, or give them
mm,
good ideas that they can use and incorporate in the travel policies. But again, in terms of, just before we close, I'm thinking about, with travel policies, most organizations don't have the flexibility to change the travel policy on an annual basis, for example,
mm,
or when huge changes happen in the world, whether it's from the airline
yes,
perspective or environmental perspective. So in terms of making sure that the travel policy is future fit, so 3 to 5 year plan when putting together a travel policy, what
yeah.
type of, maybe 2 or 3 key highlights that should be incorporated to ensure that the policy obviously works for today, but also is future fit, to adapt quickly to changes? For example,
Yeah,
around, for example, NDC, right? That
mm,
NDC is also a
that's
hot
number
topic.
one, yes.
And it does bring a different traveler experience, and we all want to ensure that travelers are happy, they feel that they're getting the best, they feel that they are able to incorporate ancillaries and value adds, and still
Mm.
gain points, whilst traveling for the company. So yeah, just let's see how we can incorporate all of these into a future fit travel policy.
Yeah, so I think NDC would be my first one to look at. We will notice a lot more change. You and I know what discussions are being had within the industry between TMCs and airlines on what is that one best way of managing NDC, new distribution capabilities, and how we're going to purchase travel in the future. It's going to look very different. Travel policies will have to change. And we're gonna need to have a lot more awareness around NDC within an organization. They need to understand exactly what's coming, what the challenges come with it, and have those allowances that, you're going to start off with a base fare, but have allowances for that traveler to add on, seating, luggage, and so on, and flexibility. And also making it simpler for the traveler to purchase the travel NDC as well through a more unified channel or approach. And that's really a lot of collaboration between the airlines, the TMCs, and organizations. So NDC is definitely one that a policy would need to cater for. And then also looking at those underrepresented travelers. Remember what we mentioned earlier. I think we'll notice a lot more of a different persona of traveler coming through. So it won't just be your road warriors or your execs anymore. A lot more of the digital nomads, a lot more hybrid workers such as myself. So we really need to focus on those. I'm not saying that just because of me, but for any, travelers out there, we need to have a little bit more flexibility and consideration for them and their wellness as well. So certainly look at that. Sustainability is a big one, I think. Let's not just record emissions and track emissions. Let's reduce emissions. Let's look at ESG as a whole within an organization, whether you're a TMC or an organization. Speak more and consider sustainability more and what strategies there are out there. We have started the sustainability talk just before COVID. And I feel like it then was a very hot topic, and then it sort of, petered out a little bit, and now we're rising into those discussions a lot more. So that's coming, and that needs to be accounted for. How are you going to purchase travel? Are you going to look at the most direct option, the cheapest most direct, and things like that, that will influence travel policy. So there's a few things, that we can do, but I'm aware of time, so I've got many more. We can spend another hour if you're all available, and I'll give you some points and tips.
So I saw a message or a text regarding Airbnb, right? Again, it
Yeah.
speaks to, corporations having that awareness of what traveler preferences, which we spoke about
Mm,
earlier, and trying to incorporate that into the travel policy without being too restrictive. I mean, some of the areas of the risks I can think of when it comes to Airbnb in corporate travel is that, each property is independently owned.
yeah.
There's a level of anonymity from a
Yeah.
host perspective, and a location perspective. Sometimes the restrictions or the security measures that are behind a booking only allow certain information until the booking is confirmed. So how
Yeah.
do you then incorporate that into a travel policy where you have to ensure that obviously there is a balance between the satisfaction of the traveler, but as well responsibility and duty of care from the corporation's perspective. Then you have something that I also thought about as well is the reliability, because with when you're dealing with a chain hotel, for example, there's a whole chain of
Support.
command in terms of
Mm,
communication, escalation, a
yeah.
contract, SLA, you know, um, and all those parameters that are governed into a contract, that go with the contract. With Airbnb, how do you bring that in? Service issues, data privacy, security. So it's quite a big web when it comes to bringing all these alternative accommodation options into the travel policy and into the controlled, or managed, not controlled, it's a better
Mm,
word, managed space. So yeah, no, thank you so much for your insights, Jono. And I think this topic can go on for more than an hour. We only have an hour,
easily.
but thank you very much. Any closing remarks before we end the call?
I think, firstly, I want to just thank GBTA. Thank you, Criso. Thank you, Nikki, and everyone for having me. I want to really applaud GBTA. I've noticed such amazing access to content. I'm really glad to hear that these conversations are being encouraged. We're trying to encourage them a lot with our customers as a TMC, but I think there's a wider conversation that needs to be had. I really applaud anyone who isn't a member yet to become one. And for those members out there, I'm certainly going to be making use a lot more of the resource that GBTA it gives you, whether it's on their website through these conversations that are recorded, and other collateral. There's really a lot of opportunity for all of us to learn and share together. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, that's all I wanted to close off with.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, Jono. I owe you a cup of coffee for this. Well, much more than a
Or
cup
a
of
glass of
coffee.
wine. Yeah.
A glass of wine, yes, when I come to Cape Town.
When you come to Cape Town, I'll
But
take
yeah,
you.
thank you very much for all who managed to attend. Please spread the word. We are really having these conversations to grow together as an
Mm.
industry. As I always say, when we are in these platforms, we take off all our brands. You see, I'm wearing all white, no branding. We are
Yep.
here as travel professionals to grow together, share the conversation, and
Mm.
also professionalize our industry in Africa. Our mission as GBTA Southern Africa is to actually take over Africa and become officially the
Yes.
Africa chapter. So we can't do that
That's it.
without the numbers. If you are
Mm.
not already a member, please do join. Remember that members also get a discount for our annual conference, which has already been announced. The venue has been announced. Look out at our social pages. Monday next week, registration opens. So hopefully we'll see you soon at the conference itself. We'll close off this session for today. We will post the recording in our LinkedIn page, GBTASA on LinkedIn, as well as on YouTube. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Kiso. Thanks, everybody.